This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.
And welcome to the OI podcast, the Otago Institute podcast, conversations with experts from the worlds of arts, sciences and Mataranga Māori, brought to you by the Otago Institute, the Otago branch of the Royal Society for Arts and Sciences. Kia ora, no mai, haere mai, and for those of you new to the OI podcast, welcome. I'm Dr Barb, a quantitative ecologist with a background in modelling, climate change, biodiversity, conservation prioritisation and SciComm, and a PhD in botany from Otako Whakaihuwaka, the University of Otago. And we hope you enjoy this episode. This is episode 132. And joining us in the studio today, we have Professor David Taylor from the National University of Singapore, Head of Geography. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here, David.
Thank you, Dr Barb. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you very much.
And have you travelled all the way from Singapore?
So I was in Melbourne. I'm on sabbatical at the moment from my position in Singapore. And my most recent part of the sabbatical was spent in Melbourne. But I came from Melbourne down to Dunedin to give a seminar in the University of Otago.
Nice. And yeah, fantastic. And we will talk a little bit later about I guess some of the information that you had in that seminar and about your you had an article recently in The Conversation. Is that
on Peatlands? That was a couple of
Mangroves.
Years ago.
Was it? Oh goodness!
I think so. Yeah.
I didn't. Do you know what? I didn't look at the date on it. How terrible is that for research? Oh my goodness. The geography lecturer sent me a little bit of background on yourself, and I thought, it's actually a really interesting paper that's there, and I really like the conversation. I don't know if the listeners out there have had much to do with the conversation, but I am just going to put a little bit of a plug in for the conversation here because it's free. Anyone can sign up to the conversation, and it's fantastic because in a world full of misinformation and disinformation and kind of really biased reporting and kind of not that much factual stuff out there, obviously we're here trying to do a little bit of pushback on that, but the conversation is really good because they kind of, now you can speak to this from personal experience, but from my knowledge, they get sort of a journalist together with an academic who's a specialist in whatever the subject is, and you write the article kind of together. Is that?
That's right, and it's usually based on some science that's just recently been published.
Right.
That's likely to have wider impact than just simply the science itself, but go beyond that into the public arena. And what I also really like about it is often the journalists who you work with are local journalists. So for that particular piece, we were working with a journalist from Indonesia.
Oh, right. Oh, wow.
And so they helped put the piece together to make it more appealing, I think, to the kind of local market as well.
Yeah. And of course, a lot of your work is centred there in Southeast Asia. And gosh, is Indonesia actually part of Southeast Asia?
It is, of course, yeah.
Is it? Yeah. Because it kind of comes down. Yeah. I always think of Southeast Asia as kind of, from my own biases of doing some anthropology work there as part of my undergraduate, it's kind of Thailand, Cambodia, Laos.
Right.
Sort of the kind of mainland
Southeast Asia.
But of course, all those islands coming down there are part of Southeast Asia. Yeah. And so today we're going to talk about the human dimensions of environmental change and environmental pollution. Mm-hmm. And I kind of liked your turn of phrase there, how you just consider climate change as one aspect of human-driven environmental pollution, and it's kind of a, I don't know, just something you can sort of sit with a little bit and think about.
Right. So climate change, people often forget that anthropogenic or human-caused climate change is driven by greenhouse gas emissions, and those are pollutants basically.
Yeah.
And so it is another form of pollution. Interestingly for me as well is that it interacts with other pollutants too. So climate change can increase the impacts of other forms of pollution too.
And when we're talking about other forms of pollutions, would you like to just elaborate on some of those interactions and some of those?
We know that countries which experience a lot of particulate matter pollution,
like smoke and smog.
So climate change can increase the vulnerability of those people, increase the impacts.
How does that work through?
So I think in a number of ways, complex ways. I mean, it can increase in warmer conditions. People respire more quickly, they breathe more quickly, so they're ingesting more pollution. It can also cause weaknesses, so it can increase the problems other health problems that people might have, which then make them more vulnerable to the effects of toxins in the air and things like that. But it's not just humans that are impacted. So some of my work in the past has looked at the impact on aquatic fauna. So fish, for example,
Right.
As water gets warmer, fish again will respire more quickly, and so if the water contains pollutants.
And that, of course, when the water is getting warmer, there's less oxygen in it as well.
Exactly. So yeah. So they have to respire more, and they have to take in more and more water across the gills. And that water, if it's containing pollutants, they're just taking in more and more pollutants.
Right,
so if those pollutants include things like heavy metals, then the ingestion of heavy metals can also increase dramatically at rates higher than the fish can excrete them. So those heavy metals accumulate within the flesh of the
Not wanting
fish.
to be totally human-centric here, but that does also flow through because
Exactly.
whenever people are eating the fish or the fish that eat the fish,
it gets magnified.
It gets magnified.
And then
in that
humans
sense,
consume them as well.
it's a good place.
So climate change, in a way, is, I hate to use a military term, but it's like a force amplifier.
Is that a military term, force amplifier?
I think so. I heard it being used by some kind of military types once, and I thought that's a good term to use.
No, it is a good term. I may have used it myself at some point. I didn't realise it had military implications, but it does make sense. And I think that is like, I agree entirely. I think that is where climate change is. It's not this kind of thing that's a separate thing that needs to be dealt with. Dealing with it means dealing with all the interactions.
Exactly.
And the amplification that it has on other.
Exactly. And it's
other
difficult
aspects.
to unravel all those interactions as well. Yeah.
And I guess also we probably don't need to unravel all those implications before doing. I mean, we know why climate change is happening. We can address some of those issues, and I imagine quite a lot of your research is also on that end of things, sort of that applied, reducing some of those mitigation, adaptation strategies, prevention of it in the first place, and that as well as looking at the interactions and the flow-on effects and things as they go on.
And the science of climate change has been known for over 100 years, and certainly when I was a PhD student, the science of...
Which wasn't 100 years ago.
No. But it was... Sometimes it feels like it was. Yeah, good point. But even then, scientists knew full well what climate change was about, and what the big questions were the impacts on humans, the impacts on agriculture, and the like.
I mean, to me, that's one of the most interesting things in the study of kind of the sociology and the human kind of interactions with climate change is that the mechanism, the fact that climate change is happening and how it's happening and why it's happening, have been known for so long, early 1900s. It's really quite basic physics, and everything that the science community has kind of learnt since then is just building on that knowledge, kind of refining the details of exactly, what regional or local impacts of it could be, and, that going through those flows of indirect and kind of...
That's right. And that's why climate change fits into this broader narrative of pollution, because we normalise pollution. Pollution is something we've got to get through. So that on the other side of it, we'll be rich, having done all this economic development, and we'll then be able to afford to repair the world after the pollution event. So that's why in the 19th century you have these pictures of like Manchester, where I am from, with the smokestacks and very heavy air pollution, and big business basically arguing that, this is all just a temporary phase.
That's intermediate.
We need to get through this, and then we can start to pay for a cleaner environment. And you can see the same things happened in China, it's happening in Vietnam now, etc., And we have that same attitude about climate change. This is just something we need to get through, because eventually going to be so rich we'll know how to deal with it. But unfortunately, climate change has such profound impacts, not just on us ourselves, but on the broader environment, leading to changes in the environment, this runaway Earth idea, that potentially become impossible to do anything about. The Earth system changes to such a degree as a result of climate change, as a result of human-driven climate change, that we just can't stop it anymore.
The thing that always amazes me with the whole discussion is I think people start with this kind of, there's always been climate change and there'll be climate change continuing, and I guess to me it's all about the rate of climate change. But also someone said to me at some time, like, the Earth will still be there. Regardless of what happens with climate change, the Earth will still be there. The real question is what else will be there. Like, it's really us that's not going to survive that, not the Earth.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of species, a lot of biomes, a lot of the environment will change.
Yes, yeah.
But, I know.
So if you look at the history of Earth, I mean, I started off as an Earth scientist for my PhD, and it was only towards the end of my PhD when I realised that it was probably looking at the human dimensions of environmental change were perhaps more interesting than looking at the long history of environmental change, which I'd originally embarked upon a study of. If you look at the long history of Earth's history and its climate, the last 10,000 years, when humans and civilization have progressed and agriculture has been invented and spread around the world, they're extremely unusual. That's an extremely unusual time. The last 10,000 years have not been the norm when it comes to Earth history. We've been really fortunate. And of course, because we've had this envelope of comfortable conditions, comfortable climate conditions, where we've been able to grow crops, develop cities, have lots of fresh water to drink and things like that, we've assumed that these are the norm. But it's a very fragile system. And it doesn't need much to switch that system into a different state, which is much less conducive to human development and human survival. And so I think we need to keep that in mind. These are not the norm, these conditions. We're very lucky to have these conditions, so we ought to be trying to maintain them rather than saying, well, the Earth's always changed. What's the problem? Of course, it has always changed. But for the majority of the Earth's history, it's been in a state that was not conducive to human survival.
And there's an argument to be made that human evolution has got to the point where it is now, and agriculture and the cities and everything evolved now in this time period because the conditions were conducive to us evolving now, right?
Exactly.
Like, it's not a coincidence that this is a nice kind of zone for us to in terms of the long term of the climate. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think people still kind of, there's this kind of, I don't know, like, imagination that we'd have been fine running around with dinosaurs. And I guess, like, there's a lot of TV that does.
They're probably easy to hunt if you've got a gun, but perhaps not.
Yeah, and I kind of think, but would we? And like the whole, it's quite, the past Earth was quite a harsh environment.
Of course, yes, of course.
For us,
yes,
as a species. But it's an interesting thing. It's interesting how you were talking about that kind of that idea that we have that pollution is an intermediary phase.
It's a stepping stone.
It's a stepping stone.
Just something we've got to get through.
And then it'll all get picked. And I think in New Zealand, very much at the moment with various, and I won't get into politics, but there's sort of, I don't know how much you know about it either, but there's this kind of fast track idea about mining. And I think mining is one of the big areas where you do, and it's outside the area a little bit, I guess, of climate change. But there is an impact there, if I swing back round to it, is the whole idea that mining, it's quite destructive, but then the mining company says, oh, we'll put it back. And a lot of the time they're saying, oh, we'll make it even better once it's back, and we're gonna tidy the area up, we're gonna make it even better. And I kind of, it's not possible. Like, you can't, like, make an open cast mine, take everything off of it, and then miraculously put it back better or the same even. in my mind, it's just not possible, right? Because you can pick a certain number of key, colourful, brightly coloured species and kind of make a pretty picture. But, you know, an ecosystem's more than that. It's all the microbes, it's everything. It's the structure of the soil, it's that bedrock, it's the history, it's the way that it's developed over time. And sure, that area might be kind of run down, it might be pristine tropical forest, but it may have been degraded by various human activities over, 100 years or a couple of 100 years even. But going back from a degraded kind of system to a not degraded system, you don't have to go through total degradation to get there, I guess. And I kind of am thinking that is that one of the key areas where you get this coincidence of climate change and pollution, because mining's quite a pollution heavy type activity, and then if you add on top of that, extreme environmental climate effects, extreme storms, things that haven't been seen before because they're more intense, more frequent, then you have a kind of, I don't know if you wanted to talk to that.
Yes. So I agree entirely. But climate change and mining. I mean, the fossil fuels that are used as part of mining. So you could look at mining and the production of minerals across the entire life cycle of those minerals, and the way that they interact with climate change across that. So from the mining itself to the production, the use of those minerals in industrial production and construction and the like. Some things will go into concrete. Some things will go into cell phones or whatever, and then the disposal of those consumer items. And throughout that entire process, there are interactions with climate change. Those interactions are largely negative. There aren't many places along that pathway where whatever's taken place previously has been addressed as a result, because of human activities, whatever, they've mitigated climate change or...
It's not many things pulling back the effects of climate change. Almost everything is accelerating them.
And I come from a former mining community myself in the north of England. My grandfather was a coal miner for 54 years. And the landscape is still devastated, even though the last coal mines closed when I was a child, 50 years or so ago. And people still having problems, the houses falling into disused mine shafts and things like that because the land subsides and things. So these impacts go on for a long period of time. It's not just the immediate impact of the smoke billowing out of production facilities and mining facilities and the like. It's those long-term. Yeah,
I was quite shocked at that, we did a couple of postdocs in the UK, and we were based Durham, York, in that northern mining area, and we were looking in the villages around Durham for a house, and a couple of the ones that we looked at, the neighbour had just come home and there's a massive sinkhole in their driveway, and they'd been set. They'd said, look, sorry, you can't go back in the house and get anything. It's unsafe. The shaft wasn't mapped. It's gone. And this is shafts that were made, as you say, more than 50 years ago, and not everything was put on the map.
No.
And then those people were like, you can't go in your house, and this, unfortunately, the house that we were looking at was next door to this house, and it just couldn't sell it.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're like, I'm glad we didn't buy that one by accident. But we did end up living in one of those little ex-mining villages.
Right.
And of course, once the coal ran out, the whole community just got disbanded, basically.
Exactly,
which was a bit crazy, really.
Yeah. So the river that ran through the town where I'm from was red. It was red in colour, and it was from the iron from the workings of the coal mine. So
wow. At least, here it's all about gold.
Right.
It's largely about gold. And of course, with gold, you've got all the, cyanide, mercury, and all those things that are used to kind of extract the gold from the rocks that it's in and the crushing and stuff. And so it's quite interesting to think of past. Because of course the big thing is, there's going to be all this money coming into the area. There's going to be employment. There's going to be houses. There's going to be people. But of course that's all short term.
Exactly.
It's all it stops.
Yes, exactly.
And
and all those costs of pollution that are externalised to the community, but not just the community that's living around the coal mines when they're working, but in future as well.
The future generations of the community.
You don't get any benefits at all. It's just the cost that they're paying.
It's just the cost that they pay, and it's, it's...
My younger brother worked for many years in South Africa in gold mining, in Southern Africa, I should say. I once went to visit him at the Zwaneng diamond mine in Botswana. It was just a huge, huge hole in the ground. And I remember he was production engineer at the mining facility. And I remember him saying that, I hope nobody ever realises the destruction that's caused through the production of diamonds. I mean, again, that's a really crazy situation because you can produce diamonds through an industrial process. They'll look exactly the same as diamonds that are mined.
Which is crazy, right?
It is crazy,
that's just crazy. You can actually just make them.
Exactly.
But somehow, because they're found in the ground and it's not like somebody's... Yeah.
These are natural diamonds.
Yeah. But it's kind of crazy as well.
It's
because,
crazy.
why diamonds as well? Like, the premium cost that we put on diamonds and gold to a certain... I mean, gold is kind of useful in useful things, but most gold isn't used for the things that it's useful for because it's, it's
most
bendable.
Gold's in a vault.
In Fort Knox. And then just dig it out of the ground and then make it into little squares and then put it back in the ground.
Ship it off somewhere. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's crazy.
It
but
is
and it's kind of interesting because people do use as a reason for these things. But gold is needed.
Yeah.
We need gold to do circuitry and all sorts of stuff. But such a small amount that's used for that. And there's already so much gold actually already been mined. And I imagine the same is true for diamonds. Yeah. It's quite a strange situation. Anyway, I have been distracted completely. I didn't mean to go down the rabbit hole of mining, but thank you very much for indulging me there. Hey, I did mean to just go through a little bit of kind of I always skip over I'm so excited to get to the discussion about things. I always forget to go, who is this person and where they come from, and luckily you've kind of filled in a bit of that, but I did just want to go through and say, BSc Honours in Botany and Geography.
That's right.
And of course now you're Head of Geography at the National University of Singapore. And an honours degree, which I think it's a 4-year degree. I did an honours degree as well, but it's become less usual now to do honours degrees. People do. Yeah, it's sort of, people tend to do a 3-year degree and then a diploma or a dip grad or just go straight to a 2-year masters or something. I think now. I think they're trying to, I don't know. Anyway.
So actually, if I might just interrupt there, my first degree was a 3-year honours degree. It was a 4-year honours degree the year before I started on the programme. So I was the first. Oh,
you're the first 3 year.
Yeah, the first. But basically, what the university had done is just compress 4 years of study into 3 years.
Into 3 years. Oh, interesting. But Leeds, UK, and then a PhD in environmental history from the University of Ulster in Northern Ireland, and that was largely sort of Central African based.
Yeah, so I was working on peatlands in Western Uganda.
Oh, interesting.
So in the area where the mountain gorilla.
Did you see the gorillas?
I did, of course, yeah. But this was before it was all commercialised, so yeah.
Wow.
It wasn't even a national park when I was doing it.
Oh, really? Goodness me. I'm not going to ask how long ago it was. But, but how does someone from Leeds get to do a PhD in Western Uganda?
Yeah, it's a really interesting story, actually. I mean, I'm originally from Burnley, which is a coal mining, or was a coal mining and cotton town in East Lancashire. Actually, most New Zealanders might know Burnley because it's where Chris Wood, the footballer, played for 5 years in the Premier League. Chris Wood is now the captain, or has been the captain of the New Zealand.
We're talking about soccer, aren't we?
All Whites, the football team. That other sport that's that gets played. Anyway, I digress. So I went to Leeds University. I graduated in 1982 with a degree in botany and geography. There weren't many jobs in 1982 for botany and geography graduates. I really wanted to be a professional footballer.
Really?
I couldn't do that. I wasn't good enough, basically. But I did have a trial when I was younger.
And by football, you mean soccer?
I mean soccer. Yeah. Sorry.
Just for the listeners out there.
Right. Yeah.
I just have to keep going through my brain.
Right. Yeah. Soccer.
So did you pay like D grade or something? B grade, or do they have different league
So at
grades?
the time I played for the university and I played for the school when I was at school. And then as a graduate student, I played for the university as well. I was captain of the club.
Oh, so you weren't bad, eh?
I was okay. I was all right. Yeah. But anyway, I graduated in 82. There was very few jobs. The only job really that was open was to try and join the army. I couldn't get into the army because I had the wrong attitude, apparently. And then I saw in the newspaper...
It's quite good to have the wrong attitude.
Yeah.
I think I'd put that quote
proud
up.
of that,
That'd be one of the quotes I'd put up on my wall.
Yeah. I remember them
the
telling
wrong
me.
attitude.
Yeah.
Did you ask them to elaborate?
I did actually. There were some of the questions I was asked, I couldn't answer them. I mean,
right.
Yeah, those are, anyway. So I was unemployed and looking in. I actually was working in a warehouse in Burnley. I was looking through the newspaper and I saw this PhD opportunity advertised, based in Northern Ireland. It was during the Troubles in Northern Ireland. It was to do work on environmental history in Uganda. I'd done a dissertation at Leeds on the environmental history of Brimham Rocks near Pateley Bridge in the Yorkshire Moors.
I've been to Brimham Rocks.
Very beautiful location.
They are gorgeous, yeah. Kind of very Heathcliff
exactly,
kind of.
Yeah.
That kind of.
Yeah, granite, millstone tours, basically.
Yeah. And all sorts of odd shapes, like they're piled up.
Exactly.
Like they shouldn't physically be still
right.
there. And you just go there and you think, that's really sort of that.
Yeah, so this is a natural rock formation. I remember I was doing my I'm just saying that for benefit of the viewers, the listeners, sorry, not the viewers. And some tourists were there when I was doing my fieldwork for my dissertation. And there was an American tourist, of course it was, and they asked how old was the castle. I said, what castle? They said, this castle, and they pointed to these millstone grit tours, which is natural rock formation. They thought it was
I mean, to be fair, there are a lot of derelict castles lying around the UK.
No, this is a natural rock formation.
Wow. Because they're all lovely and sort of
rounded and weathered. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's an amazing landscape.
Oh, they look absolutely amazing. There's a lot of amazing landscapes up there in the north.
Yeah, it's beautiful,
Northland.
And so I went over and I was interviewed for the scholarship and did I got the scholarship. I suspect I was one of the few people interviewed because not many people were willing to go and live and work in Northern Ireland at that time. One of the conditions on the scholarship was that they were trying to reverse migration from Northern Ireland into mainland UK. And so
they wanted people to go and settle in Northern Ireland.
It had to be somebody from Britain who...
right.
Scotland, Wales or England, and I fitted that bill and I got the opportunity.
Right.
And I ended up doing a PhD and I was absolutely amazed and fascinated and I loved it.
It sounds like really interesting, right? Yeah. And how many people get to go to Uganda?
Yeah, and I'd hardly ever been out of Europe. Well, I'd never been out of Europe, hardly ever been out of the British Isles, never mind going to
Can I ask, have you any idea why there was a PhD based out of Northern Ireland but working in Uganda? Like, what's the connection between Uganda and Northern Ireland?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Basically, the person who became my PhD supervisor, Dr Alan Hamilton, he'd done his PhD in Uganda. He'd worked in Makerere University in Uganda and married a Ugandan and then moved to Northern Ireland for his first academic position. And he just had the opportunity to advertise for a scholarship. And so, it was an incredibly serendipitous moment for me. I mean, the chance of me looking at the newspaper and seeing that advertisement, then actually hitching to Northern Ireland, because I couldn't afford to fly there at that time. In the early 1980s, you had to be very rich to fly. Getting there and being interviewed and managing to convince Dr Hamilton that I could do this PhD.
And did your family think you were absolutely nuts?
They thought I was crazy, yeah. But they thought it was even more crazy when I went off to Uganda.
Yeah, I mean, going to Northern Ireland's one thing, but then going from Northern Ireland to Uganda,
Yeah.
Interesting. But never look back. And you got to see the gorillas.
Yeah, and actually one of the big motivating factors for me throughout my career has been that experience in Uganda, living and working, because I spent a good number of months there doing field work.
Yeah.
Living and working with people who were obviously right on the edge through no fault of their own. People had virtually nothing. In terms of the kind of what I would have valued, but they're willing to share everything that they had. And there was this great little experience for me. I was waiting for a bus in my field area. This is quite a remote part of western Uganda. And the bus that I was waiting to catch apparently had broken down. and there were people. This is some distance from where I was. It had broken down, and a young guy, came out of one of the huts in the village where I was waiting, and said, "Oh, we've been looking at you, and you're waiting for the bus. The bus isn't coming. It's not going to be here for another day." And he said, "Come with me, and you can stay with me and my family."
Gosh, isn't that amazing?
And I went to and I stayed there for 2 days, two nights actually, so 3 days, and they fed me. They let me sleep. I slept on the floor. It was fine. And they were really hospitable. They clearly were extremely poor in terms of the kinds, as I say, the kinds of things that somebody from the West would value. No TV or anything like that. And at the end of this stay, when they got word that the bus was on its way, and as I was leaving, I said, I'm so grateful, and I was almost in tears. And it still makes me kind of emotional now thinking about it. And the guy said, "Don't worry. I know if I was ever in England, you would do the same for me." And I thought, I hope you never go to England, because you're going to be so disappointed when people don't do the same for you.
Well, I've got a story to tell you.
Okay.
When we first went to York, we were living in this little terrace housing, and we had no money, and we didn't have a car, and we hadn't quite organised ourselves to get a bed yet, so we were sleeping on the floor, and we had to get the bus to get to the supermarket. And the landlord had said, "Oh, the bus stop's just around the corner there, go there." So who we were renting from, and we went around and we waited at the bus stop, and we waited, and we thought, it's supposed to come. It hadn't come. We thought, oh, maybe we just missed it. And it's an hour to the next bus. So we waited and we waited and we waited. And we've been there about 3 hours. And then a lovely lady from the crossroads came across and said,
"Okay, there
you're
go.
waiting for the bus, but it's not coming." It's not coming. They don't come today. You'll be waiting another 24 hours.
But she didn't invite her back to her house.
She didn't invite us back to the house to stay the night, but she did come over and say, "Look, I've been watching you out the window of the kitchen, and I just wanted to let you know that stop waiting."
Yeah, without a doubt, there are nice people around the world, and I've been really impressed actually being here in New Zealand, just how friendly people
that's
are.
nice to hear.
That is good to see.
Good to see. Yeah. Anyway, so environmental history. What kind of things were you doing with that field work there?
So I was, as I say, I was really coming at it from an earth science background initially. Right. So I was working on the swamps, which were basically accumulations of peat, so very organic sediment, organic-rich sediment, so the remains of plants, basically. Right.
So this tropical forest that we're thinking of here.
So this is a quite high elevation, so it was above really the forest line. So this is about 2,500 metres above sea level.
Right.
So the hillsides were largely cleared of what forest there had been and were cultivated. Right. But in the valley bottoms were these accumulations of peat sediment. So some of those valley bottoms had been occupied by lakes, and those lakes had been filled with sediment. In some cases, it was soil that had washed off the hillside. Right. But also, it was mainly this very organic, rich.
But it's quite high, so it's quite cool, isn't it?
Yeah, cool. So the reason you have these accumulations of peat, so it's partially decomposed remains of plants, basically. So the vegetation that's growing in the valley bottom, when it dies, because the soils are wet and cold, it doesn't decompose very quickly, and so it accumulates as peat. And so these in the sites that I was working on, and I dated the sediment with radiocarbon dating. Those sequences of peat were about 25 metres deep. Wow. And at the bottom, the age of the peat was about 40,000 years old.
It's amazing. This process has just been going on and on for longer than, not in Africa. People have been in Africa for, I don't know.
Yes, but
a long time, but for longer than we can remember, right? Even in oral history. And it's fun. So I'm just going to interrupt you there, because Uganda, what sort of latitude are we looking at?
So right on the equator, basically.
So it's right on the equator, because we tend to think, if we haven't been to Uganda, of it being hot. Yeah. And maybe kind of dry even, but it's not. It's wet. It's tropical rainforest.
So Uganda's mainly on a plateau. So the kind of average elevation of Uganda is about 1,300 metres above sea level.
Right, so it's quite high.
It's quite high.
Like 1,300 metres.
Yeah, so it's a really pleasant climate. It does get hot.
Like the top of Mount Cadrona, for the skiers out there, is 1,900 metres.
Yeah.
So you're kind of halfway up. The bottom of Mount Cadrona ski field, where the Cadrona pub is about 600 metres. So you're kind of a good way up the hill
that,
there, and that's kind of the average elevation of the whole country.
That's the baseline, basically.
Right.
And then you have these uplands in the west in particular, which are associated with the Western Rift Valley. Most people have heard of the Eastern Rift Valley, the Great Rift Valley, but there's a western arm of the Rift Valley as well. And that runs up through Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, Rwanda, and along the border between the Congo and Uganda. And so I was on the eastern edge of that Western Rift Valley, the mountains associated with that. And as I say, where I was in Chigezi province, which is where Bwindi Forest is, which is where the gorillas are, the highest elevation there generally is about 2,600 metres above sea level. It does get higher. There are volcanoes there which are of higher elevation. But yeah, so in the cold valley bottoms, which are also waterlogged, you get these accumulations of peat.
Because you've got a lot of rain because it's right on the equator there.
Yeah. And an overland flow and things, and low evaporation because it's cold. Right. But also the significance, and I didn't realise it at the time, but of course those big, deep peat deposits are packed with carbon.
Right.
And so more recently...
That's what plants are, right?
Exactly, yes.
And plants that don't decompose just hold on to that carbon.
Exactly. So in terms of climate change, really important that those are kept stable and protected. Of course, nobody was thinking about that at the time. When I was doing my PhD and digging these long cores of peat sediments, I was looking for evidence of past climate change.
Right.
The introduction...
Because when is this? This is the mid-80s.
Yeah.
So this is like Rio, the first climate Rio, that's like 1990, 1992.
Yes, exactly. 1992, exactly. Yeah. So it was long before then, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember giving a talk at Makerere University, and I was talking about climate change in the tropics, and there was not a lot of interest in climate change in the tropics. It's like, what's this mad guy doing here talking about climate change? But I was trying to unpack climate change in the past. I wasn't talking about climate change in the present or in the future. Although when I was there, local people were saying, malaria is now spreading to higher elevations. We're suffering from malaria because it's getting warmer. Yeah. But I didn't really put it together. This was like 1983, 1984. I didn't put that together at the time.
There's limits to PhD students, right?
Yes.
This is your first big... I mean,
exactly,
And just to put it in place, this is your first big solo kind of guided research fieldwork. And I had dysentery at the time as well. Oh, my goodness.
It was difficult to concentrate on anything. Fortunately, it was bacterial dysentery, not amoebic, so I was okay. Yeah. It was not too bad. But and then... I remember also at the time there were plans to drain those peatlands and to cut the peat and use it for fuel, which would have released all that ancient carbon into the environment.
Yeah, and of course that's, it's been peat's been a fuel source.
In Ireland,
the Shetland Islands, Ireland,
exactly.
all those kind of northern latitudes have used peat for a long time. And I guess the fact that they've used peat for a long time, when there were fewer people around, they were maybe using less peat in total, and that's kind of that impact of population size on things as well.
So that's the other thing that I've come to realise over the years is that some human impact can be quite good for the environment, and so a low density, low intensity human impact can actually create diversity. So
I mean, we're part of them. Like humans are. I mean, depending on your worldview of the world, but from a lot of points of view, humans are actually part of the environment, and it's partly that idea that we think of ourselves not as part of the environment that's causing quite a lot of the problems, because the more we kind of like disassociate us from the environment, it's easier to have these massive impacts and not be thinking of them through. So I think, in some ways...
It's not human impact itself, it's the intensity and the spread of human impact, the kind of global spread that are the issues, really. I mean, if you look at in England, one of the most popular tourist destinations is the Norfolk Broads in East Anglia. The Norfolk Broads are old peat cuttings that have flooded as a result of sea level change. And nobody there would look at those landscapes and think this is a severely impacted human impacted landscape. It is, of course, but in that sense, because the landscape's partially recovered, it's actually created this diversity that wasn't there previously.
It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, the whole. But I mean, peat, and I guess peat has kind of continued on through peatlands and those wetlands, and looking at those huge carbon storages. I think there's the other thing I always think of with carbon is there's so much of it in the soil. But because it's like carbon dioxide in the air, you don't see carbon dioxide in the air because it's a gas and it's kind of, you don't see it, right? And so people don't think of it as pollution in the same sense as smoke and particulates because you can see them, so it seems more like pollution. Plastic bags in a stream seem more like pollution than the fact that you've released carbon dioxide and the stream's getting warmer, which is also pollution.
Exactly.
But it's just really the human perception of it. And I think carbon is a little bit like that as well because we see trees and we can go, okay, trees, they're green, largely made of carbon. But soil, largely made of carbon. Especially, you get more carbon filled, anyone who's seen a good compost pile, it's carbon that makes it a good compost pile, right? And that peat, it's hard to envision 25 metres of tightly packed carbon. I think for me, one of the things that I can't remember who first brought it to my attention, but you can look at a forest, even a really like a tropical forest that's packed with epiphytes and ferns and lianes and all sorts of clinging greenery everywhere, but most of it is just space.
Yes, yeah.
Like you see the green stuff and you think, oh no, it's all full, it's fully packed, but actually it's mostly just space.
Exactly, yeah.
Whereas in the soil, the carbon's really quite densely packed because it's all packed down by the soil on top of it. Yeah. And so there's, overall, there's more carbon
in the soil.
The soil, even if it's got a forest on top of it. And of course, the forest on top of it keeps the carbon there. So the forest is also important. And it's not that I'm saying the forest isn't important, but the soils are really important.
Yes.
And some soils, like peat forests, they're not peat forests. Like peatlands don't tend to have forest, at least in New Zealand.
Oh, yeah.
Talk to me about Southeast Asia and Uganda, because when I think of peat, I think of peat bogs on the top of a mountain or a domed peat bog or, that kind of Shetland Islands, or in New Zealand context, it's high elevation, cold, wet.
Yes, no, exactly. You're
above tree line.
So I agree entirely with part of what you're saying, and that's this idea that the carbon in the soil is often, and the substrate, is often overlooked when the focus is on the vegetation above it, the carbon in the vegetation. You're completely right. There's much more carbon generally in that soil and in the substrate, and that's particularly the case for peatlands. It's also the case for lakes. We never talk about the carbon in lake sediments, but there's more carbon accumulating every year in lake sediments than there is in the ocean. We talk about blue carbon. This really important blue carbon we've got to protect, we've got to calibrate, we've got to calculate, we've got to sell. We never talk about the carbon that's accumulating in lakes. There's much more carbon.
Wow. And that's because of the sediments falling down all the time and leaves blowing in.
And so some of it's from the catchment itself washing in, but some of it's from productivity within the lakes.
The phytoplankton and stuff just dying its natural life cycle.
Exactly. So that's the part I agree. I can't remember what was the second thing, which I didn't disagree with. I can't remember what it was.
About all the gaps in the forest, maybe.
Oh, no, I agreed with that.
Oh, okay. Oh gosh, I can't remember. Honestly, it's so unusual that people agree with me.
Okay, right.
No, but I was wanting to, because you did a lot of work in Southeast Asia as well.
Oh, so that was it. Yeah, you were talking about what grows on the peat. So you're exactly right. In Ireland, in northern Britain, in New Zealand, in many temperate parts of the world, the vegetation that grows on peatlands is sedges. So it's kind of like a grass-like.
Mosses and sedges and sphagnum moss, that sort of stuff.
And that's the case at high elevation in the tropics as well. So where I was working, there were sedge swamps. Lower elevation, including peatlands in much of Southeast Asia, which are close to sea level, under natural conditions, swamp forest grows on those peatlands.
Right, so there are trees.
Yeah, and they're big trees.
And they're big trees.
And I've had a PhD student who's just finished recently, Jonathan Wren, in the National University of Singapore. And based on his research has kind of like questioned some of the ideas that we have about how peat why peat forms in these low elevation sites in Southeast Asia. Because in high elevations it's cold and wet. And that combination of cold and wet reduces the rate of decomposition, and that allows peat to form. At lower
a little bit it reduces the rate of things growing that are being formed into peat, right, as well. So that's kind of a balancing effect.
Yeah. But overall, the peat accumulation.
Yeah, and I think of them as cold, wet places because I'm a temperate type person, alpine temperate, that's me.
Yeah, and Ireland is exactly, it's one big peat bog basically because it's cold and wet.
Yeah, but then of course there's mangroves.
So down at lower elevation, because we think at lower elevation, because they're hot, I've worked on peat swamps in lower elevation Indonesia. It's 30 degrees centigrade. It's certainly not cold, and it's that temperature throughout the day and throughout the night. Very little variation. It's the type of organic material in those situations that's reducing the rate of decomposition. So woody stems, lignum in these trees, when they die, very, very difficult to decompose under waterlogged conditions. So it's the nature of and the reason I'm stressing this is because this has implications for restoration. We talk about restoration of these damaged peatlands in places like Indonesia, and mainly that involves simply raising the water table to reflood the peatland, and that then supposedly allows peat to start accumulating again. But it doesn't really, and the reason for that is because you need those trees back on the.
You need the trees first.
Yeah, you need those trees back on the peat so that when they die, they can start. They don't decompose. They contribute to the accumulation of the peat. So that makes restoration a much longer term process and also a more complicated process.
It's an interesting point, though, isn't it? Because it's the logs.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the wood. Yeah. That's actually changing the conditions and the water combined.
Exactly.
That's making it suitable to not those anaerobic conditions presumably has been produced. Yeah. Which is, just for a visual out there, that's why the piles that hold up Venus are still there.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Because they're not decomposing. So without that process, you wouldn't have Venus.
And I think here in New Zealand you have places where there are these logs.
Yeah, massive kauri logs, for instance, that are just in bogs and they're still there.
Years old. Yeah, exactly.
And all that kauri gum, like that kind of swamp kauri, they call it.
So I think this has also exposed one of the issues that we have in the tropics, which is people are now recognise has been a really important engine for climate change. We've ignored the tropics when we're thinking about climate change.
Which is crazy, really, because
it occupies a large part of the Earth's surface, exactly, and it's a big heat generator as well. So one of the issues that we face is there's so little work done in the tropics that we tend to import ideas from places like Europe or Australia, New Zealand, and places which are much better studied. And
but may have completely different processes.
Exactly. So we're making these assumptions based on really faulty kind of evidence. Yeah. Well, not faulty evidence, but false understanding.
Yeah, just kind of like you're just going, oh yeah, it's the same here. But then, when you just think about it, obviously it's not the same.
No, of course.
When you it's kind of that slow, fast thinking. Your first thought is, just it's going to happen the same. Like bogs are bogs.
So I think one of the problems here is that we kind of assume that the natural environment behaves like a physics lab or a chemical experiment. So, these
but that's just easy science.
Exactly, yeah.
It's really easy science because you're in a lab, you've got controlled conditions, you've got this reagent, reagent, stick them together. Same thing happens every time. But ecology, geography, it's not like that. It's all about the interactions. It's all about the variables. It's all about, And
I know, certainly in Singapore now, and I know in other parts of the world, geography is struggling as a discipline because it's seen as somewhere between the arts and humanities and STEM. And I always maintain that geography is not rocket science. It's much more difficult.
Much more difficult, Yeah, no, it's funny, I knew a rocket scientist once, and I said to him, half jokingly, what do you guys say when, people in general say it's not rocket science? He said, well, actually, rocket science is really easy. It's just and that's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
It's like even the rocket scientists know that it's really easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a crazy thing. So you're at the moment still working in Southeast Asia?
Yes, yeah.
So you've kind of, like, you've gone from Africa, still in the tropics, now working in Singapore, Southeast.
So I still do work in Africa.
Right.
And I run a field course every year to Kenya for our students in Singapore.
Sounds amazing.
I bring 25 undergraduate students to Kenya.
And who pays for that? Do the students pay for that?
So the students pay part of it.
Sorry to be so commercial here.
No, it's a good question. It's a great question, and we really struggle actually. So the students pay part of it. The department subsidises the students to a degree, but then I try and make the field course as cheap as possible for the students.
Right.
So we camp when we're in Kenya. Yeah, so we have 11 days. We camp for 10 nights, and we camp in 3 different locations. For many of the students, it's their first time ever camping.
I know, but it's like you can't, I don't know, it is different being there and actually going, this is really hot, and then walking up an elevation and it's like really cold, and seeing the vegetation change, seeing the soil structure change as you go. And it is kind of a funny thing because you think, just read a book or you can see it on a video, but it's not the same.
And I think also, as in many parts of the world, people in Singapore have quite comfortable lives, and so climate change is a relatively abstract phenomenon. They can see it happening in other parts of the world, but not really happening to them. We go to Kenya, we camp. On this last visit earlier this year, there was unusually heavy rains at a time of year when they wouldn't normally occur. We were camping in that period. We were washed out from the campsite on occasion. And I think it was really useful for the students to actually experience what climate change is like when you're living on the edge through no fault of your own.
Yeah.
You don't have anything to fall back on.
Just people get born where they get born.
Exactly, yeah. That's right.
It's kind of
and have to cope.
Yeah. And it's an interesting thing because it's about that kind of interaction with humans and climate change. It's like that.
Exactly.
You've got that, and who it impacts depends on where you are and what resources you've got, and your ability to adapt or mitigate the effects of climate change. I mean, even not just between Central Africa and Singapore, but even within a country, like even within New Zealand, depending on how financially viable you are and your ability to change where you live or decide, which type of housing you have, how well you can mitigate or adapt to, sudden storm surges or high rain events or, what happens with insurance premiums, all those things.
That's exactly right.
It doesn't fall equally on everyone.
Yeah, it doesn't fall equally, and because of that, not everybody is able to cope as well as...
Which I guess is fundamentally unfair.
Yes.
Crazy. Hey, we are just about out of time here.
Oh, really? That went really quick. I've only just got started.
You've got maybe 90 seconds to last thoughts if you'd like.
I'm really pleased to be here. I'm only in New Zealand for a few days, but I've really enjoyed being here and seeing it's a really beautiful country. But one point I wanted to make is that you could consider invasives as a type of pollution. All a pollutant is something that's either in the wrong place or it's in the place in unusual quantities.
Yeah, that's interesting, actually. Yeah, because it's kind of like we do think of things as separate fields, but I think once you start thinking of environmental pollutants and thinking of climate change as environmental pollutants, and also because we have obviously in New Zealand, one of the big things with New Zealand is invasives, and it kind of interacts with climate change on multiple ways because people are thinking, we'll just plant pines everywhere because we've got wilding pines everywhere, right? Which is, under that definition, another pollutant.
Exactly,
and they don't do as well because of all that soil carbon, which is accumulated under those tussock grasslands over hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years probably. And that's that accumulation of that carbon, and then you change the system by throwing in a whole lot of these pine tree pollutants. Yeah, it's an interesting thought. It's just kind of the whole, concept of thinking about things as pollutants, and then thinking about how do we just not put so many pollutants in, and how we take the pollutants back out, how we repair that, and who pays for that repairing and just making people think more about, the long-term effects of those pollutants in whatever form they are, and how that kind of flows down in the generations.
And also people knowing that they can actually do something. I often hear that in Singapore. We're just a small country. Individuals, when they get together, can have a positive effect.
And the most important thing an individual can do is vote.
Yes, exactly. But we're not getting into politics.
We're not getting into politics, but anyway. Hey, thank you so much for joining us here, Professor Taylor. It's been fantastic talking to you and going through human dimensions of environmental change and pollutants and all of those things. And fantastic. Enjoy the rest of your stay here.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the OI Podcast, the shout-out for the arts, sciences and Mataranga Māori.
You can support this podcast by becoming a member of the OI. Check out the Otago Institute for Arts and Sciences on Facebook or our website.
If you'd like to listen again to this episode or others from the series, look for the OI Podcast on OAR FM's website, oar.org.nz.
Brought to you by the Otago Institute for Arts and Sciences, the Otago branch of the Royal Society of New Zealand.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.